Good morning. Hope the vocab quiz was to your liking. Hope you all studied for it and are ready to roll this morning. Today we're going to be moving forward with our Chapter 2, the Spread of Civilization lecture. And in particular, we want to look at the civilizations in America. Archaeology tells us about the ancient societies that once existed in Mesoamerica. The first signs of civilization appeared around 1200 BC with the Olmec, whose culture influenced those that followed. So here's our pristine civilization's bell ringer. The word pristine means from the earliest time or original. Archaeologists use this word to identify a handful of civilizations throughout the world that were not influenced by previous civilizations. These pristine civilizations were therefore the first or original civilizations in their regions. Such civilizations include Sumer in Mesopotamia, the Harappan civilization in the Indus Valley, and the Olmec culture in Mesoamerica. Our question is, what might be learned by studying pristine civilizations? So let's think about that question for a second. They've not been influenced or tainted by other civilizations. They don't have any outside influences. They were allowed to develop in their natural environment on their own. What might be learned by studying pristine civilizations? Well, one of our possible answers is this. By studying a pristine civilization, researchers can learn what basic factors have led to the development of civilizations, since they can more clearly be seen in a civilization not influenced by other civilizations. Also, researchers can determine how the civilization influenced later civilizations in the region. Now, I just read through that and my head is spinning because of how many times I had to say the word civilization. I actually became distracted by how many times I just said the word civilization. So if you need to, rewind that and listen to what's actually being said. In other words, it's like a science experiment. You have factors, you have outside influencing factors that change the outcome of your experiment. The experiment is how did these peoples evolve? How did their civilizations grow? You want to see this is your control experiment, so to speak. There's no X factors, there's no variables that will change the outcome of it. This is just the people in their natural environment not being influenced by other civilizations. Therefore, it's called a pristine civilization. So the question that we're looking at right now are what characterized the first Mesoamerican civilizations? The thing that we're trying to understand the most is that the Olmec were the first Mesoamerican civilization. This is something you will need to know for your test. Olmec culture is the first advanced civilization for which we have found evidence of in Central America. A good example of an early Olmec settlement is San Lorenzo, a site that has been well excavated by archaeologists in the Gulf Coast region of southern Mexico. Buildings here have been dated to around 1200 BC. The Olmec had their own writing system and a distinctive artistic style best known for its large carved stone heads with sloping flat foreheads. They appear to have sophisticated trade networks that helped spread their civilization throughout much of Central America. After about 400 BC, the society appears to have gone into decline. Here's an outtake from Michael D. Coles, The Olmec and Their Neighbors. The rise of the Olmec civilization was probably remarkably similar to that of ancient Egypt. Both were the gift of the river in two respects. First, the annual cycle of the river enabled large populations to live in the area, and second, the most highly productive land was highly concentrated and circumscribed. The best of all the land along the river in Mexico was in the immediate area of the Olmec center, San Lorenzo itself. As the prime mover in the development of the New World's first civilization, the Cocos deserves as much praise as the Nile. So what this author is saying is that the Olmecs are very similar to the Egyptians. They both needed the river to survive. They both arose from the ashes, so to speak, to a very advanced for its time civilization, and therefore should be studied on the same token as the Greeks. As the Egyptians. Now, here's some things that we want to learn about the Olmecs. The term Mesoamerica refers to areas of Mexico and Central America where ancient empires flourished. The Olmec are the earliest known civilization of Mesoamerica, and as we talked about, they appeared around 1200 BC. They farmed the lowlands along the coast of Mexico and traded with other peoples of Mesoamerica. There were large cities and religious rituals. The Olmec built large cities containing pyramids and other stone monuments as centers for religious rituals. What we see here is an Olmec stone head. These are huge heads carved from stone by the artisans, and they are believed to represent their gods or rulers. The carving is remarkable because the Olmec had no metal tools. They had no metal tools, so how did they do this? Did they just use a harder stone? Maybe they had found diamond in mines and realized that diamond could be used to chisel stone. This is a very ornate carving, a very large carving to have done without metal tools. After the Olmec civilization collapsed around 400 BC, some aspects of the Olmec culture, such as a ceremonial game played in a stone ball court, and their calendar and numerical systems were adopted by later civilizations. So the Olmec heads are portraits of humans or maybe their gods. The Olmecs carved several huge heads. The largest is about 9 feet tall. Each Olmec head has a headgear that actually looks like an old leather football helmet. One theory is that these headgears might have been protective coverings used in rubber ball games, which were popular with the Olmec people. Now, these rubber ball games typically, if I remember my history correctly, resulted in death. The winners, it was just like basketball. They had a stone court, there were hoops, they were trying to put a ball through the hoop, and the losing tribe were put to death, sacrificed to the gods. This image shows an Olmec head, and there goes my phone again. The images shows an Olmec head in Vallejuarismo, Mexico, that dates from between 1200 and 10,000 BC. Can't believe my phone actually went off on me again. That's pretty embarrassing. Oh well, such is life. So let's look at some common features of Mesoamerican civilizations. Agriculture. Common features of Olmec and other Mesoamerican civilizations. They all had agriculture, irrigation, swamp drainage. They actually raised fields, architecture, large urban centers, temple platforms, monumental sculptures, jade carvings. They had religion. One of the gods they believed in was a jaguar. There was a priestly class, a sacrificial rites, and they had this ritual ball game that I spoke of, and different thought. They had a solar calendar, and they had a base 20 number system. So these are just common features of these Mesoamerican civilizations. They all had some sort of shared these features, whether it was the Olmec or the Zapotec or the Teotihuacan. They all had these things in common. Let's talk about the Zapotec civilization. The Zapotec civilization was established in central Mexico around 500 BC. It was centered at Monte Alban, where temples and pyramids were built on a massive stone terrace atop a 1,200-foot mountain. That's pretty wild to think of. They built these things, temples and pyramids, on top of mountains, not on flat surfaces in the desert, but they actually climbed the mountains 12,000 feet high and drug their materials up there to build their temples and terraces. Most of the people of Monte Alban lived in terraces cut into the side of the mountain. And the nobles and priests ruled over farmers and artisans. Again, we're seeing this development in a pristine society, a pristine civilization. We saw this same development in the Nile River Valley, in the Indus Valley, where there's outside influences from other cultures. What does this say about human nature? What does it say about human nature? That we gravitate towards a social class. We gravitate towards these nobles and priests, those who are part of the religious inner circle or held to a higher standard, a higher regard. And then there's artisans in the middle, and then there's the lower class. This is just human nature of how things work. I think it helps us put order and structure to our society. The Zapotecs had a written language, but it has not been deciphered. So they were writing things, but we don't understand which letters are related to what. It has not been cracked and deciphered. The city was abandoned in the late 18th century AD, and that was the end of the Zapotec civilization. Let's talk now about the Teotihuacan. Teotihuacan was the first major city in Mesoamerica. It was established about 250 BC. The city was located in one of the richest farming areas in Mesoamerica, and most of its inhabitants were farmers. It was a busy trade center. Goods were shipped to Central America, Mexico, and what is now the southwestern United States, so this would not be considered a pristine civilization. Among the goods made by the city's artisans were tools, weapons, pottery, and jewelry. The artisans were especially famous for objects made from obsidian, volcanic glass. This is one of your keywords. It is estimated that there were 400 obsidian workshops in the city. That's pretty fascinating. They were making things from this volcanic glass. If you've ever seen obsidian, ever held it in your hand, it's glassy, real smooth, reflective, but a rich, dark black color. For unknown reasons, the city's power declined and it was destroyed and abandoned around AD 1800, so 800 years after Christ's death. After Christ's resurrection. Now, the one thing that I do want you to take away from the Zapotec is their center, Monte Alban. You'll be hearing that again. It will show up on your test. They had a famous center called Monte Alban, and know something about some of the things that took place there, whether it was the artisans or the priests and nobles, how they ruled over the population of farmers. All right, now here's a timeline of world events during the Corral period. The thing to understand about this is that the people of the Corral and of the Shaven people both constructed large-scale building complexes. Let's get a little bit of in-depth information on the Corral and Shaven culture first. Corral was located in the Supe River Valley of Peru. It is the oldest major city in the Americas, founded in around 2500 BC, about 1,000 years before other cities in the Western Hemisphere. Corral had stone public structures, apartment buildings, and large residences, along with a sophisticated system of irrigation. The city was abandoned between 2000 and 1500 BC. The Shaven people, around 900 BC, the Shaven people in the coastal regions of Peru and Ecuador built a large ceremonial center with a stone temple surrounded by 2 pyramids and stone figures depicting their gods. They also had technology in writing. The Shaven made objects of gold and silver and built a solar observatory in the form of 13 stone towers on a hillside. There are signs of a simple writing system. So these are some of the things that were going on in the world during the Corral period. So in 2600 BC, the city of Corral in present-day Peru begins to flourish. Shortly after that, during the Old Kingdom in Egypt, the 3 pyramids of Giza are being constructed. Now, shortly after that, about 20 years, the Indus Valley civilization of India establishes 2 large cities, Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. So all these things are happening at the same time. We see how civilization is expanding and emerging. City of Corral in Peru begins to flourish while we see the Egyptian and the Indus Valley are doing so at the same time. The Minoan civilization flourishes on the island of Crete during the 2400s. During the 2300s, Sargon founds the city of Akkad. And then later on in 2000 BC, Corral, located in present-day Peru, is finally abandoned. And then also the Minoans begin to build a palace at the city of Knossos in Crete. So this is just to show you a perspective of how everything was kind of happening and bubbling all at the same time in the world. Now let's review Chapter 2, Lesson 5, Civilizations in America. The rise of the Olmec civilization was probably remarkably similar to that of ancient Egypt. Both were the gift of the river in their 2 respects. The Zapotec civilization was established in central Mexico around 500 BC. It was centered at Monte Alban, where temples and pyramids were built on a massive stone terrace atop a 1,200-foot mountain. Teotihuacan, the first major city in Mesoamerica, was established around about 250 BC. The city was located in one of the richest farming areas in Mesoamerica. Most inhabitants were, of course, farmers. As always, if you have any questions, be sure to use the Q&A board. You can always email me or just ask me in class. Remember, I am here for you. I'm here to serve you. If you be sure that you're keeping up with your GRAs that are due at midnight, your vocabulary activity. Add words to the glossary. Study the glossary. Study for your vocab quizzes. And as always, read your text. These videos are just a summary. It's just a lecture of the lesson. I need you to read your text in order to get full understanding. And if there's anything that are missing, remember we do have our discussion days where we'll come together. We'll get more in depth and we'll gain more knowledge that way. If there's nothing that you need of me, this is the last lecture in this Chapter 2 lesson. The next thing that we'll have coming up will obviously be our test, and we'll prepare for that. Well, you all have a great day. I'll see you next time.